We will listen to what Phreak has to say for 14.2 preview, because I haven't watched this yet. Alright. It's time to listen to Phreak then. Right, sorry, I don't mean to disturb Phreak. Alright, chat. Let's listen to what Phreak has to say about 14.2 preview.
What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here. I am the design lead of Summoner's Rift Team's live pod here to talk about patch 14.2. We met today to discuss the patch, to build it out, and tomorrow at about noon, the patch will be fully locked. There is a decent chance that some of what is in this video will change by the time it sees you on the live servers. Let's talk about what's in 14.2 via the structure I built for myself. So I want to talk about patch timing. This, as well as the micro patch 14.1b, have been very tight, and at least for me, very stressful. So we talked about the micro patch last time. I'm not going to bring that one back up, but essentially that went out to the live servers Friday at like noon or something. And so of course you have to throw out Friday data. We can look at Saturday, Sunday, Monday data. So we have 3 days roughly of data, which is fine. League is a very popular game, so we have a lot to go off of. And then we can use that to build out this patch. But Monday was a holiday here in the US, so we had today of like official work time to both research what went in, and of course I spent time last night looking at stuff already, so I had some notes coming into work, but that's because I choose to work in my time off.
You don't need data to know what's OP or what's not. You just need to play like 2 games.
So a mix of some time to do research and then discussing what we want to put into the patch, acknowledging that we have very, very tight turnarounds here, and then essentially locking 90 to 95% of it today in the roughly 6 working hours we had from patch being locked to our workday is done. And there's a little bit of time Wednesday morning. We might end up spending a little bit of time stabilizing some changes in later on, but ultimately this is hopefully going to be the last time that we are extremely hard up for time heading into a patch. I am hoping that we'll be able to do some actual planning for 14.3. We knew we expected to micro patch 0.1b, that we knew timing wise, and still though there was a lot into the patch that I'm very excited about. A lot of what's in this patch is stuff where to pretty much identically cut patch 14.1 a week before it goes live. We essentially did a week's worth of 14.2 work before this ever went to live servers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So anyway, let's move forward there, which is how the last patch or patches have
mostly good,
and the micro patch. The vast majority of things that we changed in the micro patch, we hit pretty much exactly on magnitude. So the 2 standouts I'm going to bring up are Fizz's win rate is back to pretty much identically where it was before in 13.24, but people are playing him way more, and he's getting banned way more as a result, as now his items feel functional. And again, it is very easy to look and say, wow, look at all these mages who don't need mana or AP assassins, they're all winning. It would be so easy just to nerf their items again, because that's obvious, of course. But my opinion, once again, is that Lichbane is now appropriately powerful, or at least pretty close to appropriately powerful. And that
Lichbane was straight up buffed.
Is pretty close to appropriately powerful, and new Leandry
compared to last season.
Powerful.
Lichbane was really good last season.
Some tweaks for it being slightly better for dot mages than bruisers.
I think Lichbane is still good right now.
But at least there's a discussion available there in the case of Leandry's. But yeah, these items are better, and now Rumble and Singed have functional items. We can balance them around them having functional items, but it means we have to then go in and say, okay, now that people are building correctly and have good items, we need to once again shot call what is Singe's appropriate win rate now that his items, he feels supported in the item system. What is Fizz's appropriate win rate? Because it was 52 for a long time and no one seemed to really care. A 50% win rate assassin, by the way, is absurd. And yet
this is true. Some champions have gotten better items like Singe or Rumble. But at the same time, other champions that used to have good items have gotten worse items.
People weren't really banning him that much.
In my opinion, champs like Zard and Vel'Koz have gotten worse items now.
And now that he has better items, people are like, wait, no, Fizz feels awesome. And it's like, oh, he can feel better at 51 in this system than he felt at 52 in the previous system. Okay, great, right? And win rate is not necessarily power, and it's certainly not feels, right? So we've got to sort all that out. And guess what? It's going to take a lot of time to figure it out. It's going to be the case, right? There's going to be a lot of time. But I will say that, yeah, in the case of Fizz, right, win rate went to a pretty good spot. In the case of Zed, we got him back to about the win rate he was before, but now that he's not doing Ravenous Hydra, full heal, infinite wave clear, his ban rate is lower than it was before, with the same win rate that he had 3 weeks ago, with a ban rate that is still decreasing afterwards. Now, certainly those bans are going to champions like Fizz. Ban rate is not a zero sum, but the fact that it's still trending downwards over the last several days from what I saw, it's like, oh, Zed is less frustrating that he's not tied to Ravenous Hydra. Great. Like, that's a good thing for League of Legends, right? Champions being less frustrating is a good thing. This can't always happen. Some champs will just eat bans, but good stuff. And the other thing I want to bring up is Time to Kill. TTK is Time to Kill. So I got to see a report on Time to Kill this morning. This is basically how fast are champions dying. The TLDR is tanks are tankier than before.
Tanks are tankier than before. Right, guys. So we're gonna do something about that. Frozen Heart, Turbo OP. Every Emmer item, Turbo OP. Random Summon if enemy has crit, Turbo OP. We need to do something here. Also, the Emmer version of Sunfire is probably overpowered as fuck too.
Are statistically significantly, but very lightly, less durable than before. This is trivial to change.
Hold on, what did he say?
But tanks are tankier than before.
Tanks are tankier than before.
Fighters are statistically significantly, but very lightly, less durable than before. This is trivial to change if we want to by just tweaking their items around. This would be similar to the stuff I did in 13.22 or something. Or
what does that mean? Statistically lightly
towards health, and then
what? What is he trying to say?
Standing out and being clearly more durable than assassins and clearly less durable than tanks. I think there's a lot of room. There's a ton of room to move them around. I think we can move mages more toward items like Roa and Landry's and stuff, and make sure that
yes,
AP
thank you.
Plus health produces are good. Sometimes it might require.
What about CDR?
Like Gragas probably should be an AP bruiser, a little bit more like a Mordekaiser, and a little bit less like, I don't know, a Kali.
What about CDR? I agree, but what about CDR?
Feel supported in an AP bruiser style build. Even tank items are fine on him, but like probably items like Cosmic Drive need to feel like very enticing, and you know, maybe they need kit updates that make Leandries feel good. I'm not sure, but the idea of saying, okay, we actually have a decent suite of good AP bruiser items, let's really put these champions there, I think is a pretty compelling thing to do and think about. So somewhere I'm kind of putting, so my thought process, again, this is not getting promised for 0.3, it's not getting promised for 0.4, but it's kind of thing that I think we can do. And of course, the to continue on the time to kill thing overall, though, and not get into the weeds on certain champions, of course, the biggest delta here is conventional mages. You just go down through a list of mages, and it's like, oh yeah, people who used to go Seraph, well, that item no longer has health on it, but they still buy Seraph, so they're just squishier than before. So it's like Kassadin and Ryze are like very clearly they are killing faster and dying faster. Marksmen are dying a little bit faster. Again, it's statistically significant. It's a little bit faster than like compared to pre-patch, compared to fighters, from what I recall, because flat pen is a little bit more common right now, and there's a lot to unpack here. We of course have some work to do in time to kill. I think we want to bring it back down
a little bit.
There's a lot to go on here. I won't spend the entire time in this one, but at some point I'll probably do more time on time to kill.
Okay, let's get into the changes, Phreak. Come on, wrap it up.
A lot here in this patch. Again, I think we are incrementally moving in the correct direction, but I'm not saying that we're back to, you know, the exact same time to kills we were in 0.24, because we're not.
We're definitely not. We need a durability update.
Than it was
yes, thank you.
A month ago, and I believe we should work to at least get close to that point in time, if not actually farther beyond it, and actually have the game be less lethal than before. That's tough when you give a bunch of mages way better burst. When mages say, why do I have health in my items? Why do I have ability haste in my items? Then they have more raw ability power. This happens in the game, right? And so there's
sure, Phreak, this is what happens, but let's be honest, you guys went too far into the AP and too little into the ability haste and health, especially into ability haste. You guys should have actually just removed one of the ability haste and health, not both at the same time. IMO.
There's a discussion around what should the combat pacing actually be.
And this happens when you add items like Storm Surge into the game, which are toxic.
Regardless, let's move forward for now, because I don't want to spend forever on this. There's actually a lot in this patch. Okay, so some longer term projects. As I mentioned earlier, 14.3 will be the first time we get to do sort of large scale patchwork. I'm not promising a lot of stuff there, but it's the first time we're going to see probably like larger mechanical changes on any of the seasonal stuff, if not
Okay.
other things going on. Some champion projects are in flight. I'm doing a kit update. When it gets close to release, I'll talk about what's going on there, but I'm actually very excited about it.
Which
Basically
one?
taking a pretty niche champion and making her
Her.
basically reward a lot more champion like depth, and hopefully that'll be really cool. So feel free to
Can it?
hypothesize in the comments, but anyway, probably
He's
in
not gonna
maybe
say
two
her.
patches. I think within 2 patches, I think get this project ready. So excited if we can get that to happen. Anyway, move on.
Okay.
So we have a bunch of systems changes. We'll just put them all on the
Alright.
screen. Nah, probably shouldn't. Okay, so we're gonna stop about here. So we identified once again systems that we wanted to put into the right place, and then from there, acknowledging systems changes, what we want to do with champions. So
Okay.
Bloodsong appears to be overly poached.
Yes.
Probably
It's
room
overtuned.
for a larger mechanical update here around maybe the cooldown of this item. But basically, in order for like Pantheon to feel good, you want the selfish power of I get a really beefy Sheen proc, I get some really good damage. Because Sheen procs are based on base AD, this makes it better on Pantheon or a Pike than somebody like Bard or Sona, who have less attack damage. That said, the shorter the cooldown is in the Sheen proc, the easier it is for Sona to cast another spell and auto-attack you again. I mean, she's always got something available for the Sheen proc, and so Sona is actually quite good at Sheen procs. Now, as long as she likes Lichbane, she can skip on that and go for a Zazax instead, but
What
whatever.
about the
This item
Dream
is definitely
Bubble
poached a
item
little
on
bit.
support? That's
I'm not sure
overturned
it's
too.
really overpowered, but it does feel a little extreme, and so anyway, we went
Milio
for
with the Dream Bubble.
damage amp.
It
going
is so
down here.
overpowered. There's no nerf here?
Basically, ranged champions are really, really good at spreading and reapplying the damage amp to multiple
He's correct
champions
though.
because
This
the
item is
duration of
procced
6
on
seconds,
range
the
way
cooldown is
better than melee.
1.5 post auto attack. It's very easy for a typical ranged champion to put it on 2, maybe even 3 champs in a team fight at the same time, which is a really, really, really big deal. It is a lot harder for Pantheon to do that. And so right now, with less power into the amp, it's more about the Sheen proc, it's more about the selfish power, and the Sheen being good allows you to feel good about playing things like Pantheon support. Again, I'm not saying this is the exact right situation for Bloodsong, but this should hopefully lower its poaching. Frozen Heart was buffed to be very, very good. It's certainly very cheap. It's very grabbable. It is certainly too good. I mentioned it.
Why
in the patch
is it
rundown.
400
linearly down
gold
with,
cheaper
price as well as stats? The item just gets too good. Or I shouldn't say it gets too good. That's not like a hard default rule. It buffs the item, and so Frozen Heart overbuffed. We nerf the price. Okay, fine. What should I say here? Riftmaker. I think there's room for debate whether Riftmaker is actually overpowered or not. It's only going to have so many users. That user base is around 6 champions where they buy it very commonly. It still is a very, very
that probably means
item.
they're going to
very, very
nerf
strong.
it by 100 gold.
It's fair to say that these are still going to be the same 6 users. We're just going to make it less strong as an item. That is also reasonable. Right, like there's a world where something like Lichbane is overpowered, but it still only has like the 6 Lichbane users, but it's still an overpowered item, right? So any good item could be like this. I think it's reasonable to nerf Riftmaker, and so it's 100 gold more expensive.
Yeah, I knew
Storm
it.
Surge is getting double hit here. Storm Surge is still the most built item in League of Legends.
It should be nerfed.
It's hard for this
heavily
not to be the most built item in League of Legends. It is.
I wish it's useless,
I would argue,
honestly.
the coolest, like mage item. Mages want to burst people. Move speed isn't
first of all, personally, as a mage player, I hate Storm Surge. Like, maybe like low elo plaps, like the boom, explosion or whatever, I burst you. I hate this playstyle so much. It's like, this item is just like, I just wish it wasn't in the game, and if it is in the game, I just wish it's really bad. I actually have more joy building Road of Ages and scaling than buying Storm Surge and one-shotting.
What is it? Appreciated stat. It gives move speed twice. Flat pen is an appreciated stat. That's really good as well. Solid amount of AP. The proc is really cool. Like, yeah, this item, it is unsurprising this item is popular. That said, my instinct is this item should be more niche. It should clearly be a very good assassin item, but should not be just generically bought on AP champions.
Okay, Phreak, here's the issue, okay? The issue is that mana as a resource is completely fucked in League with these new items, okay? Champions who have either low mana costs or do not use mana are perma-rushing this item, okay? And it's not only about this item, they can probably do it with other AP items too. This one's just the best one at it. This is the problem. We have lost the meaning of mana in League, man. When LeBlanc can just rush this item and then have no mana costs, no mana issues for the rest of the lane, and then just keep doing these procs which are giga easy. Like, just think the
basically,
design is
Litmus
terrible.
Less the move speed is really, really valuable, which, to be fair, it very much is for Galio. It probably shouldn't be a Galio item, but again, having a move speed proc is a really big deal for literally Galio. Half of his skill test is kind of getting range of you, so some of that is like, this item gets move speed, guess what? That's a Galio stat. So some of this is it's a little unfair to say it's not allowed to be built on Galio because half of what the item does is what he wants. The other half is, yeah, go burst somebody, which is not exactly what he's trying to do. Anyway, I'm not trying to spend too much time on this one. Ultimately, it's down by 10 AP. It's down the AP ratio on the proc. I am a fan of lowering overall proc. Now, to be fair, Storm Surge's proc needs to be good enough to feel compelling and be valuable. Right? It needs to be worth you actually doing the thing to get the benefit going, but it is a bit strong, so fair enough there. Horizon Focus is not popular enough on its core users. This item is always going to be niche because not a lot of champions are artillery mages, but we want to really make sure that Horizon Focus feels like it is the appropriate item to build on the artillery mages. This item is still quite inexpensive, which is good. It still is one of a few haste items, which, great. I think haste is a very reasonable artillery stat. You're generally poking from far away.
I'm a bit confused here. Horizon Focus has range and range. What does that mean? I don't think the item needs a range buff or nerf. Like, what? I'm so confused here. It's 700 range. That's not too hard to proc this item. This item, like, is supposed to be for artillery mages, right? Like, either you give it like 10 AP or you just leave it as it is, or you maybe make it like 100 gold cheaper. Like, the problem with Horizon Focus is that, like, other items are just better. Once, like, once the other items get more in balance, Horizon Focus is gonna be better.
Way, and you often have consistent access to a target, if not the ideal target, and so haste is pretty linear in terms of damage scaling. So, like, this item, I think, is statted, like, shape-wise correctly.
Okay.
But cool, buff the item to make sure it feels good to use on its, core set of users, on Xerath, on Ziggs, on Vel'Koz, absolutely. So this is the range to consider that you are actually getting the bonus is getting shrunk, so you more reliably get the bonus. And
wow, so it's going to be 600?
Getting raised. So it's not strictly damage positive, though you will, of course, have situations where you damage someone in between those two ranges, and now you get the amp, and so it's going to be a big deal there.
Okay.
Next, Steel Sigil. This is just a small
that's fine, I guess.
The item was an epic item that wasn't 100% gold efficient, so very easy change, bringing the price down so it's 102% or something gold efficient. Just should be the case always for epics like this, so very easy.
This is fine.
Stride Breaker is getting very worryingly large in stat efficiency. From what you can tell, this item still isn't very good. Of course, the active is kind of limp without any damage on it. It's just a fairly short duration situational bit of move speed and a pretty short duration CC. That's not the strongest active, of course. This is definitely a candidate for some very small scope patchwork in 14.3. One of the possibilities is making it a team out item and giving it damage on the active. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it is something that we are thinking about here. Ultimately, yeah, Stride Breaker is active.
This is fine.
It's not carrying a ton of power budget if this item is incredibly gold efficient and still not as good as other items. It means that the active isn't, as strong per, point of gold as other actives. So, of course, all its powers and stats. No big surprises here. Anyway, the item, again, looks a little bit weak. I don't think we want Stridebreaker to be a terribly common fighter item. I think it's okay if it's a little bit niche. And it's like, yeah, this is an item that's really good on Garen and...
I'm afraid of this item if they overbuff it.
And sometimes Olaf.
I think it's very oppressive when it's overbuffed.
It's like 2 alwayses and 2 sometimes and 2 situationals. Like, that's fine for Stridebreaker. That's a totally reasonable set of users. I think just going generically, yeah, all fighters get a slow on demand is... I don't think we need to tune it that way. And so it's fine as the item is relatively niche. It's just like niche and also bad in the champions who would buy it. Next,
okay, experimental hexblade. Please tell me you're nerfing the item. Please.
To experimental hexblade, this is probably a buff, although you can debate it. The build path being moved around a little bit from Noon Quiver to Hearthbound Axe. And 5 of the attack speed from the active is getting moved into base stats. So the build path is worse because Noon Quiver is a better item than Hearthbound Axe. But at the same time,
why?
Total stats on completion is slightly better. It's a very, very light buff. It's not really meant to be like a big buff. It's meant to be
I hate it.
Make the build path make a little bit more sense, which I think this does. So just, it's, I don't even call it modernization. It's just, I think
I hate it.
The item. Speaking of
okay, Phantom Dancer. I literally said it like it was yesterday or 2 days ago, right? I was playing Tristana on stream, I think. I was building PD, and I was like, why in the world is this item not building out of Zeal? Because it builds out of Hardbound Axe. It's the worst build path I've ever seen on any item in League almost. It's mind-blowing how bad it is. Just tell me you're putting Zeal and call it a day, right?
Build path, Phantom Dancer is getting its Zeal back. It's also getting...
Nice.
It's going to build from Rectrix, whatever. This is the
Also
long
the
move speed
assassin
item. Since
AD
Phantom Dancer
item,
has
yeah.
base move speed of 10%, Zeal and Rectrix both move into it just fine, and that's just an appropriate build. So
I didn't
no
watch this
more
before.
Hearthbound Axe. Instead, it's got Zeal. Next is the support quest. We, in no uncertain terms, do not want teams building 2 support items.
Thank you.
You're not building 2 of them. We will basically take any design measures necessary to say, no, you can't do this, without completely ruining like actual support players' days. So a pretty hefty rules update to say, no, it is clearly not correct to have 2 support items.
Okay, thank you.
Very aggressively, like, I know what the changes are.
Rare W.
There's a chance they change if something goes weird, but essentially, no, you're not allowed to do this. It is going to be clearly wrong. If you buy it and someone else buys it, they need to sell it. It's not going to be good. So we're bricking double support items. That's just the case. We are never okay with you doing this, and so yeah, putting it in. It was like this for exactly 14 days, and it's getting nerfed. Next up is 2 sets of rune changes. So I pushed for these for a while. I don't think this is perfect. I think this is the best I could do with the systems as they are. I know it sounds kind of weird. I'm excited about doing this. I want to be really clear. I'm excited about doing this because I think...
Okay, I am not excited about it at all, okay? I already made a video on it, okay? First of all, on PBE, they introduced a rune that gave 2.5% MS, which is overtuned. Now they're putting the rune back to 2% MS, which I don't know if people are even going to take. Second of all, removing shards from the game, armor and MR shards, is going to make champions much squishier when already burst and damage is high this season. I don't know. Third of all, removing unflinching and adding a trash useless rune in place of it makes no sense. Because guess what? Most people in Resolve take always overgrowth, right? Always. So, doesn't make any sense to me. I find it weird.
What is going on here is a definite improvement to the game, with the asterisk that I'm still not in love with the result, but I think it's still better. So the first thing that came in was stat shards. So I will state the problem statement and goals.
Okay.
The problem is that it was possible to, I don't want to say entirely brick, I'm going to overstate it, to brick your rune page by picking armor and surprise Lysandra was actually mid and Zed was top, or picking magic resist and surprise Talon was top, not in the jungle.
Okay, that is not a problem, Phreak, okay? That is not a problem, okay? When I was a pro player, we intentionally swapped lanes to fuck with enemy armor and MR shards. That's called a skill thing, okay? For a player to be promoted into multiple roles, that's a skill. That's not a problem, okay? Second of all, you had a solution in place, which was health rune, okay? You don't know who you play against? Then you take health, which is good into anything. It's just slightly worse early, but it scales better. Again, what the fuck?
And you just kind of lose. The difference...
You do not lose lanes because you don't have an armor shard and you're laning against an ex-opponent. Come on, man.
In power for having the right stat shard and not is really, 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 really massive. You know, it's not like a 10% win rate drop, but like it's a really, really big deal. What's more, a lot of bot lane mages have inflated win rates because they more often than not run into bot laners who are still running armor, and by extension supports who are still running armor. The last time I remember checking, we were playing Ziggs Zyra bot lane, right? These are not unconventional bot laners. Our mid laner was like Jace or something. Like we were very clearly Ziggs and Zyra bot lane, and our lane opponents had a combined 3 armor shards. The AD carry ran 1, the support ran 2. This is the last time I checked. I'm not saying this is like 100% of all the time, but last time I looked at data, it was more than half for at least the AD carries. I didn't bother checking supports. It's really, really common. And so this heavily inflates the win rates of bot lane mages.
So, okay, so he's saying that people are running incorrect shards, which is skewing the win rate of players. Okay, but even if you remove the stat shards and you introduce other runes into the game, the same thing is going to occur, no? People will always take bad runes. That is going to happen. people will just take bad runes. Now you guys did like the outer rune recommendation, which is fine and everything, but it's just this is always going to happen, no matter like if you remove this or not.
Because mid laners actually do switch runes more oftenly. I like spot checked like Ahri versus Zed and Ahri versus Syndra, and it's like you're like 3/4 of the time getting it correctly versus 3/4 of the time getting it wrong if you're a bot laner. Because bot laners just don't change things, and it's like I can't. What am I gonna like throw a pop? Like, hey, it like Clippy shows up and goes, it looks like there's a Ziggs in bot lane. Have you checked your stat shards? Like, I just not only is I just don't think that's the best solution, but also I just don't think even being in that situation in the first place is good. So that's sort of vaguely the problem statement, right? Is it is easy to hard fail your runes. Now, to be clear, I want your runes to be situational and for you to care about them. So my goals were to give you intellectually compelling rune choices in your stat shards that were not just hard pass, hard fail. Like picking Zed, picking against Talon or Zed or Fizz and picking the correct resist in your third row stat shards. It's not intellectually compelling. It's, did you look at champ select at all, right? There's nothing intellectually compelling about that choice whatsoever. So armor and MR stat shards are gone. They are deleted. I mean, technically they're not deleted. They're in there, but they're not enabled without any of the traits.
Okay, but what? Okay, what is the like? What is his answer here to the damage being higher then? Right. So now you're saying, oh, people won't be able to run MR on bot lane against a mage. Okay. So what are you guys doing about damage then? Because damage is gonna go up in early game by that logic.
So in their place, row 2 has adaptive force. There is now percent move speed, and scaling health gets moved there. So there's offense, utility, and defense in the flex row. And then in the third row, scaling health got moved to the third slot because then it lines up with the other one. But armor and MR got replaced with flat health and tenacity. And so this is like very clearly defensive, right? Flat health, scaling health, or tenacity are 3 defensive outputs. There are a couple other things that I'd considered, things like health regen and something else like double resists, like hybrid armor MR or scaling hybrid armor MR. And I chose tenacity as the final one. Again, I'm not in love with giving you tenacity as a stat shard, but it's functional. It's tenacity and slow resist. Yes. And this is to say, okay, look, you have the choice of early game durability. If you're against Zed and you're going to get all in at like level 4 or 5. You have scaling durability. Okay, great, right? That is, I'm not incredibly in danger in my lane, but that's fine. And
Alright, chat, I'm just gonna spoil it here, okay? When these runes get out in like about a week or two, everyone's gonna take the same thing on every lane. And I'm not kidding when I say this. Mid laners will often take scaling HP, tenacity rune will almost never be taken unless enemy has a lot of CC, and on bot lane they're always gonna, like a support is always going to take flat HP. If you have a bruiser fighter top lane, they're gonna also take flat HP, and then jungler is gonna take scaling HP. It's always going to be the same. ADC, probably flat or scaling, whatever.
you have tenacity, which is, I'm actually worried about getting locked down in team fights. It's not going to affect my 1v1 lane very much in most cases, but this is kind of something that I will need to shrug off some level of damage. And I'm okay if tenacity is the rare choice. If it's, you know, only some chance pick it 1 in 5 games, that's fine. I don't want tenacity to be the default purchase. I'm fine if it's an occasional thing that you might choose to use, and instead your real choice, do I pick early game, do I pick late game durability? I think that's more than enough. That is more than compelling. And it actually asks you to engage your brain. And yes, it is possible to default to tenacity and forget and constantly play against team comps with Master Yi and Zed and, you know, Lucian and Brand, and you just don't need the tenacity almost at all, right? It is obviously possible to run other situations, but if it's not the default, it's probably not happening. In the second row, similarly, I don't want move speed to be the default option. It's fine if Singed and Udyr are like, this is literally my best rune, I'm never gonna not run this. Sure, that's the case. I think
okay, in my opinion, move speed rune is really not fine, okay? Champions have base MSs for a reason the way they have it. There's no reason for midi champions to be even more influenced, or they have even more reasoning to take additional move speed every game. These champions are already running faster than tier 1 boots than a lot of other champions. It really doesn't make sense. And MS is such a powerful rune. It's so hard to balance this. Either you guys put a number that's too high and everyone takes it, or you put a number that almost no one will take it. I just think it's such a bad idea.
to run at you champs where it's just their best rune, and that's okay. That's going to happen for some champions. Otherwise, though, it should be the situational choice. I'm not trying to power creep move speed in League of Legends. That said, one thing that is changing, though, is
there's more move speed in the game with the new items as well.
Instead of scaling 15 to 140, it's 10 to 180. So it's quite a bit more healthy game.
That's nice.
Overall stronger. So if you were considering flat adaptive force versus scaling health, it's nudged towards scaling health. We might buff the scaling health a little bit more to like actually make it fully enticing, and that if you're playing someone like Darius, you just actually want to pick scaling health. If you're playing a Juggernaut, you just pick that rune, and it's just the best option. Now Darius probably just also wants to go move speed, but if we can make it compelling there to where a large number of fighters would rather have scaling health, or it's statistically a strong performer, great. We get to further differentiate these classes, and that's probably a good thing overall. I don't expect LeBlanc to switch off of Adaptive Force, right? I don't expect Akali probably ever to switch off Adaptive Force, and that's just kind of expected. That's okay. But maybe it's more likely Mordecai switches off or something like that, right? Okay, so that's the set of changes there. And then because Tenacity is now in the stat shards, Unflinching is getting remade into a new rune. This now gives armor and MR when you take a crowd control from someone who's not you. And then as long as you are crowd control, you refresh the...
Okay, I'm just gonna say it, okay? If this rune has the same numbers as the last time I checked PBE, the rune is legit terrible. It should never, it will never be picked. I think on PBE, it gives you 10 armor and MR at level 18 for like 2 seconds if you get CC'd or free. It is a horrible rune. It will never get taken.
The duration, and then it lasts another 2 seconds after the CC all drops. So basically, hybrid resists, it is still the rune you say, oh, I'm facing crowd control, I'm going to opt into running Unflinching. I'm unflinching in the face of being locked down. In the case of, you know, being CC'd, Tenacity moving to a stat shard as a reasonably agnostic thing that you can kind of appreciate, and hopefully this is a pretty useful system overall and enjoyable. One final system change here is jungle monster epic damage was, I think, brought too low. I put that change into 14.1. Unfortunately, this is now twice I have done a jungle change that I regretted and reverted within a patch. I'm sorry for getting stuff wrong. That's on me. But essentially, what I saw, I don't think this did all of the heavy lifting on jungle win rates, but there's certainly a decent set of champions who this carried their ability to kill things like Dragon and you know, Rift Herald or whatever, and basically tanks specifically lost a lot of epic monster damage here. And some of this as well is just like, well, Void Grubs exist. There's an extra epic monster to kill, and it's valuable. And so if you were already bad at killing epic monsters, guess what? This is now a larger portion of your power budget. And so champs who are good at killing epics are better because there are more epics to kill, right? And this is just returning at least the innate damage. I still expect Graves to be better at killing Void Grubs than like Ramus or something, right? But this at least closes the gap some, and again, I regret nerfing the damage where I did. So basically, the new epic monster damage cap is just the epic, the monster damage from the previous patch from 1324 is just getting returned back there. So decent set of system changes. Let's go on to the champions themselves. So first up, there was a whole bunch of changes we made to, because we were waiting for 14.1 to ship. We had a bunch of free time, and so I think this was Phlox basically collected a huge laundry list of community suggested quality of life changes for their champions. Some of them were just strictly buffs, and we're like, no, that's just a buff, that's not quality of life. But some of them were actually pretty smart, and so we basically went down a big list and basically like pick what you like, verify that it's good with the team, and then go develop it. And so the ones I remember developing were to Jax, Fizz, Gragas, and Evelynn. There are probably a few more that I forgot about. Ultimately, there were like 50 or 60 or something individual changes in this list. They'll all be in the patch notes in a week or whatever, but there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff here that's not going to be in like various other patch rundown stuff. So basically for Jax, Fizz, and Gragas, it's letting their respective Ws work on structures. In each of these cases, structure damage is cut by 50%.
That's what he's talking about. All right, yeah. You know what? I have a problem with the new season. Towers are legit so squishy these days. They're paper, and they even buff tower health, right? Tier 3, tier 2, tier 3, or whatever. They buff tower health, and they're so squishy. Nexus is legit like such a joke. Nexus is by some champs just one shot by like 5 autos. I don't know.
That is, of course, tunable as needed. The primary thing is basically letting your auto attack reset or your on next attack buff work on turrets. This does mean that, by the way, Gragas at like level 3 does a lot of structure damage because he does 7% max health structure damage, again, cut by half. But it's a really big, really big chunk. This means Jax can get a Sheen proc and then get the Sheen like rolling and get his W back from cooldown. Even though the W itself doesn't do that much damage, he's getting to apply Sheen procs on it. It's a lot. Fizz is not a super dangerous tower taker, but it certainly has an effect here. Now, in the past, we have made these kind of changes before. My understanding is Camille and Fiora have had these changes, and it has actually a very low win rate impact, but it does do a lot for feels. And so we know that Jax is a strong performing top laner. We know he's pretty highly banned. We know his run rate is just fine. He's in pro play. He's currently an exceptionally good jungler. But overall, there are other Jax nerfs in the patch. That's fine. This will have, of course, an impact on him for sure. Again, Fizz can hit turrets, Gragas can hit turrets. It applies the full AoE with just hitting a turret or hitting.
I think Fizz and Gragas being better tower killers is fine. I think Jax being a better tower killer, questionable.
On small monsters, you can still go for medium krugs, you can smite medium krugs. That was sort of what I chose as the like consistency.
This evident change is fine.
Rubric, I guess. So you can't whiff your W by charming a small raptor is basically the change here for Evelynn. And again, there's some other stuff that I'm pretty sure I did, but I don't remember what they were because this was weeks ago, and in some cases it might have actually been last year. But either way, that's in. Now let's go on to the champions that were more directly changed. For Nidalee's case, we're actually only changing recommended items. This is basically, Lichbane is clearly an incredible Nidalee item, and she should be building Lichbane, and so it's ensuring that Lichbane is the leftmost item in her recommended build, and that it remains in recommended build until she buys the damn thing, because it's really, really, really good on her. I am sure we will revisit her some in 14.3. That's fine, but it's saying, hey, in some cases, there are champions whose builds are just... people have not caught up to appropriate builds yet. Let's nudge them in the right direction. I think we could have done more of this. It's just time has been kind of limited. I would like to get another pass in for 14.3 as our items settle in and they're actually in a pretty good spot. Let's ensure that players have kind of are buying things that are appropriate for their champions and make sure that these are looking pretty good. And hopefully we can get a few more champions nudged in the right direction and help players get to the right spot here.
Yeah, Anderson, thanks for the sub.
Changes. So Blitzcrank, I did the Blitzcrank nerf this patch. It's -3 armor and -20%
Blitzcrank nerf
on the E punch. This is again.
Is he beating silver players?
Also minus damage. I am very cognizant of the fact that the game is pretty highly lethal. If I'm taking durability away, I would like to take damage away as well. If I am giving damage, it's because I have to be really sure that you don't deserve to get some more durability somewhere else, and so I'm trying to keep that in mind with my changes.
So Lori don't nerf
them, but it doesn't mean I can't buff damage or I can't nerf durability. So that's the Blitzcrank change. Fizz is, though his win rate is back to where it was in 13.24, has an increasingly increasing ban rate and has a pick rate above where it was and seems to be a champion that feels more functional than before because of better items, and so a fairly small touch to Fizz. We know we're nerfing Storm Surge in this patch, and so these are hopefully fairly small nerfs to Fizz that put him into a more reasonable spot. He's still one of the best performers in current League of Legends.
This is fine.
Now that his builds feel functional, he can probably have a more normal win rate and be more than reasonable. Jax, as mentioned, there's a nerf here.
Jax damage.
Flat damage and % health damage off of the E. The expected magnitude here
Alright.
is about 1.
Alright. I have to say it, okay? I know AP Jax is not like a broken thing or whatever, but I don't know, I really wish they would change the way his E works on AP Jax, because that's kind of like stupid. And then like, for like normal Bruiser Jax, you know, E damage, I mean, that's gonna hit his wave clear, sure. But I would really like Jax to not be able to slow push 3 waves and then just start proxying the 4th wave with like zero harm. So I guess going for E damage, hopefully it like nerfs his wave clear a lot.
1% win rate.
Early game at least.
But this is specifically the way the numbers work out. Targeting his early game to give him less of a clearly strong early game. Keep in mind it's very easy to double the damage on your E by pulling minion aggro and then pressing E and then taking the shots and hitting someone. This has pretty much the highest base damage of any spell in the game, assuming you are doubling it all the way out.
Yeah.
It's easier to land than something like a Gragas full charge Q and does more damage than a Gragas full charge Q in most cases. So, you know, very, very strong ability already to bring it down to a sort of more normal damage, but still a very, very high damage spell. E is a really big deal. It's a really, 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 really strong ability. This will have, you know, a decent amount of impact on Jax.
Okay. Rumble, Q damage,
Rumble,
E
now that he has items that suit him very well, is obviously feeling really, really good. This is a champion where he is, he was already too good early game. This is a tough thing where, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's a suite of champions. Rumble has been one of them. Maybe he still is if you think so. Where they're kind of non-functional late game. And so the only way for them to exist as champions at all is to have a really, really strong early game, because at least they have a strategic purpose to do something. They have like a point in time where they feel like they have the upper hand before they fall off the cliff and no longer exist anymore. This was especially old Rumble, where he was just all AP ratios, and it was basically like, well, your level 1 spells are really, really good. Hope you snowball. Hope you get your level 6 power spike. Hope you buy Magi's. If not, you're just going to lose the game at 25 minutes.
I can't turn the
like
video up.
The kid update
It's max volume
in the middle of last year. At least helped him have a better mid to late game and feel more functional in mid game team fights. I'm not saying he's really, really good. I don't think he has the same tools as like Jax or like Akali or something, but at least has some tools where you feel like a functional champion at 25 minutes and beyond, which means he doesn't have to be held up by having a low counterplay laning phase. Certainly, Rumble's Q is very low counterplay. You want to hit minions, or you're going to hit Q damage, he's going to walk at you, and you're going to take more Q damage. The other side of this is the stronger his E is, the better he is at, the more gameplay he has. Because if we lock his damage behind landing E and landing a shred and being useful there, then this says, okay, well, if you do dodge behind minions, he's not going to roast you alive that hard because he's going to rely on E for some of his damage. That said, the amount of shred here could still be too high. Keep in mind that, you know, the baseline number is increased by danger zone and then increased again by its stacking. And so any number you look at is actually smaller than the real world, because he actually can get to like 60% or something shred, which is like obviously very, very high. Now, that, to be clear, almost never happens, but it's, you know, that number theoretically still exists. So E-Shred is going down some. I do think it needs to be strong. I think it needs to be good to make the combat pattern have some variance. Regardless, Rumble, a top performer. We know he is the best, or the most contested champ in pro play right now, 100% pick ban. That's not the only reason for doing this. This is, Rumble was already a reasonably high frustration champion, and he got a suite of new items that he really, really likes, and it's reasonable to include Rumble in the list of manaless AP champs who got a lot better in the new season.
Okay.
Teemo did not
I called this
as big of a nerf as we thought.
I literally called this, like, I remember I called this last when the hotfix came out. I said there's a very high chance Teemo and Singed and champs like this are not nerfed enough. They're gonna have to do it again.
Needed. Teemo jungle especially is extremely performant right now, and so I suggested pretty heavily that we look at E. The designer who did this agreed. Also wants to do trap cooldown, since he's doing really, really well on Malignance, giving him very, very short trap cooldowns. Also a very reasonable thing. So the E on auto attack ratio is very, very jungle skewed, because he is constantly auto attacking. Of course, we want this to be good. We want Teemo to feel like he wants to auto attack when playing League of Legends, even when he's not a jungler. In long term, we may just go after the monster mod on this E a little bit.
This is fine.
At the end of the day,
Teemo jungle shouldn't be like 56% win rate in silver.
Better options, is more durable, has better items for him, and so his damage can go down because he's getting the AP he needs, he's getting the stats he needs from his items now. We now move on to the set of buffs. Ahri is getting 2 seconds off her E cooldown. She 2 seconds off her E cooldown. Smaller scale loser in the previous patch, and so
I think it's, I mean, it's a good buff, but it won't do anything. 2 seconds of E cooldown is, it's not like Ahri's issue, you know? Ahri lost so much with Everforce being out of the game, and she gets out damaged by every normal mage. She's so skill shot reliant. Like, her E is nice, and I think she used to have, when Ahri was like Giga OP, she was very popular in LCK like 2 years ago, whatever it was, or a year, I don't know anymore. She used to have that E cooldown, like it was -2, and then they had to nerf it for +2, and now they're giving -2 again. It's a fine buff, but I doubt it's gonna like make her good enough. But then again, Ahri is really, really strong spell.
An easy buff here. Camille definitely is down a fair bit as well. She's doing okay with things like Trinity Force and whatnot, but not in the greatest of shape.
I don't know how to feel about that, right? Like, it's still awkward to play Camille and only use 2 spells. You only have 2 spells now as a champion on top lane in a lot of instances, because they removed the wall and the lane is more open. It's very hard to E aggressively or defensively or whatever. So I don't know.
Trying to find things that are reasonable to buff her.
I'll pass her QMS.
Her power curve is extremely late game skewed now, because her E just it much less frequently functions in lane, because top lane is wider, whereas in mid to late game there's always walls around, and you're landing your 20-minute 30-minute E's no problem. And so her mid to late game is as good as it has been, but her early game is a lot worse. Now, there's an argument that I think is not necessarily a great one. I brought up the argument, and the designer on this was like, yeah, I disagree. That's totally fine, which was, so a decent portion of Camille's power budget is actually predicated on landing E itself. Not only does landing E deal damage, but you have to land E in order to get the attack speed on the buff. And the buff is very good. It's like 60% AS. And one could say that your E doesn't require you to land it to get AS, but then that means that she's very stat checky, and maybe that's okay. I think there's a reason to say yes.
Didn't E on Camille giving attack speed without hitting a champion didn't that used to be in the game? And Camille jungle was like super oppressive, so the reason why they removed that was for Camille jungle clear speed. Wasn't that the thing?
Oh, regardless, the designer was like, I don't want to do that, and that's totally fine. But regardless, like, okay, well, let's give Camille some functional laning phase tools because her E is much worse of one. I don't want to say it's non-functional. I don't think it's necessarily true, but certainly it's much worse, and so her laning phase is much worse because she can't.
Honestly, this looks bigger buffs to Camille support maybe than Camille top.
Can't access the damage, the stun, or the attack speed from that button, at least nearly as frequently, right? So this is how can we buff her laning phase because her laning phase fell below the bar, and so it's level 1 health. It's low level passive cooldown, and it's ranks 1 through 4 move speed on the Q to maybe keep up and land Q2 and do a bunch of stuff here. So landing phase aimed buffs for Camille that in many cases, much like especially in like the passive and Q move speed situation, will literally trend to delta 0 by like late game.
Darius, Q healing
Darius,
cost.
He was a big Stridebreaker user. He's fine on Trinity Force, but not quite where he needs to be power level wise. So this is not strictly damage. Of course, the E% pen is some damage. Keep in mind, he liked Black Cleaver some, and that item is worse weaker on him. Also, as a Juggernaut, he is meant to hit frontline, so percent pen is the kind of stat.
Darius buffs kind of make sense, but to be honest, it's kind of weird they're decreasing Q mana. Q mana is already super low. I think it's 40 flat. Most of the way Darius loses loses mana is mostly by using E. Like E eats up all the mana on the champion. Then Q healing, I think that's fine because it kind of promotes Darius of hitting Q, and then you have also counterplay. You dodge the Q of Darius, and then Darius doesn't heal as much or whatever. E-Pan, that was nerfed a very long time ago. This ability.
That he is meant to inherit. That's totally reasonable. Ultimately, though, mana cost on Q, healing on Q.
Q is probably going to be like 30 mana cost, I assume.
Both, with Q having just more cast overall, but a mix of stuff for Darius.
This is fine.
Ezreal, I really think, has the appropriate durability. He's got very solid armor for a marksman. He's got very reasonable health for a marksman. Also, this champion is long-ranged and slippery. I do not think Ezreal should be a more durable champion. Plus, he currently still builds Trinity Force, and Trinity Force is less than her health. Ezreal is one of the tankiest marksmen in League of Legends.
Yeah, that's fine.
I do not think this is a champion who should get more durable. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't believe it's correct for the champion.
I agree with this. This is really cool. But I was also expecting this. They did micro patch on Ezreal and they buffed his W by 4 seconds and whatever they did. It's just not enough. Now he's getting even more buffs. This looks really nice. I mean, I like this. I like this. I like Ezreal as a champion, right? He has skill shots have counterplay.
Regardless, I do think that Ezreal should be relying on more than just his Q to deal damage. Now, the tough thing about that is E is really only ever used to damage squishies. It's like you can use it in
that's
lane,
true.
Or you can say, okay, here's the time to run forward. I'm going to go assassinate Samira because Windwall is down and I found the angle, midway through the team fight, whatever. I'm going to go chase down this like Azir or Ahri or whatever.
That's true.
There's a reasonable argument there that E is very rarely a damage tool, and essentially if the argument is that Ezreal sucks way more against tanks because Cyrilda's is clearly a worse Ezreal item now, and that's just true, then he doesn't have the tools to kill frontline, and he doesn't help him do that. I think there's an argument that Ezreal just shouldn't be good at killing frontline, but there's also a certain amount of he should be okay at it. Bunch of considerations here. One of them is that Ezreal's win rate just happens to be elite skewed. That's not necessarily a problem. He is a relatively hard to play marksman, and so there's going to be some level of that happening innately, and that's fine. But if I can get it for free without having to do things like mess with the champion's power curve when it doesn't need to be messed with and whatnot, then I'm happy to flatten it out by moving power around in places that I think just should have power. And so for the second patch in a row, I'm buffing Ezreal W. The cooldown changed from 12 seconds to 8, and it meant basically nothing. Ezreal didn't move last patch.
Really?
And so going for things that are going to be more directly useful, AD ratio on Q, AD ratio on W by a ton. It's going from 0.6 to 1.0. And
what? No, not AP ratio. Don't. I hate when they do this. Oh, I hate it. It's like the same with like Tom Kench when they just added 5,000 AP ratio on each one of his spells. Stop it, man. Because I really hate when champions are played. He said AD. Wait, he said AD?
AD ratio on W by a ton. It's going from
Oh, AD ratio. Never mind, never mind. Forget everything I said. This is cool.
0.6 to 1.0. And rank 2 and 3 plus AD ratio on R. It's going
Okay,
from 0
these
to
are good
150
changes.
and 0.2 AD ratio.
Never mind.
Of course, keep in mind R can multi-hit. There is no fall off. It does reduce damage to champions. Or sorry,
Good
reduce damage to
changes.
minions, but full damage to champions. So that 25 to 50 on rank 2 and 3 and the 20% AD ratio will be to each champion you hit. Pretty big deal there. And it just so happens that W and R throughput are actually low elo skewed, which is neat. Auto attacks, by the way, are incredibly elite skewed for Ezreal. It's the elite Ezreals who are much better at either keeping their passive up or just
That
having
makes sense.
land more often overall. But
Yeah.
there's a much bigger portion of their power budget there, and relative to his total damage output.
I like what they're
key damage
doing.
actually
These are good Ezreal
which I found
changes.
interesting. And so, yeah, I chose buffs that were relatively flat or functional for Ezreal, right? Having much worse sustained damage because Cerrota is a much worse item for him. And saying, okay, we're going to give you one of your sustained damage tools back. But also, I really do want you to care about other spells a bit more. And so let's bump W up, let's bump R up. And W, by the way, still has a lower AD ratio than Q. Q will always have a much bigger throughput for him, but I wanted to make W feel like it mattered to land that spell at more points in time. And so heavily ramp the AD ratio because you're living at 1 point into level 14 anyway. And so AD ratio.
You know what I'm wondering? I'm wondering if there's a build next patch that either you max W first or W second on like AD Ezreal. I wonder.
Good way to make sure that W remained relevant. Now, the cooldown change means you're getting just a ton more W throughput, right? Which I think is a good thing.
Meadow, thanks for the sub.
There are some buffs to Garen. I also did the
Garen
changes here. So the point here is twofold. So I think Garen should be pretty normal skewed. He is a very easy to play champion. There was a kit update a while ago that added a lot of skill expression with a very tight timing test on his W, which we know is skill expressive. I'm not saying that was wrong. It clearly hit the goals, but I think for Garen being a fun champion for the most players possible, I think Garen should be an easier to play champion and return even more of his low MMR skew. So
good. I love what he's saying. I agree. Okay. Basically, what he's saying is Garen should not be played in high elo or pro play.
7 months. Let's
Champ
go.
is giga fucking unskilled and should be kept for new players. I agree. Thank you, Phreak.
A little bit easier to play. On average, not by a huge amount, but just nudge him a little, right? Still keep his skill expression, but just nudge him a little bit, another 5% over or something. Okay. The other thing is part of what even has any normal skew for or low elo skew for Garen at all is he's actually currently a scaling pick. And I don't think it's correct for Garen to be a scaling pick. I think this champion
I agree.
Feel like a normal level of strong at all points in time.
So I agree with that too.
Garen's early game, but I know by bringing up Garen's early game that is innately elite skewed. Darius, for example, is an elite skewed top laner because he is a lane bully. His win rate is higher in high MR than low MR. I know Darius has like the long-term reputation of being a noob stomper, but he actually does better in Masters than in Silver. He wins a larger percentage of his games in Masters than in Silver, despite, again, all the thoughts around him. Early game champs tend to be elite skewed. This is just how it works.
Okay.
So, and then there's a third thing I'm thinking about, which is I would rather Garen tend to run Conqueror than Phase Rush. I think Garen is a healthier champion.
Phreak, oh my god, what happened today? How are you saying so many good stuff today? Thank you, another win.
All around, when he doesn't guarantee that he runs at Mach 3 and is immune to slows and is thus guaranteed to land his full E and then kill you. I keep saying guarantee, ha ha ha. Regardless, Phase Rush feels like it removes all of the gameplay from Garen's combo. It's
I agree.
From brush, okay, you're just dead. So all those things led me to these two changes. The attack damage ratio is up on Garen E, ranks 1 through 4. This is not a very big change, but it is mathematically somewhere between 10 and 2% more E damage. Levels 1 through 8, which is not trivial. It's a decent amount of extra damage. Makes him better in lane, right? Brings up his early game a little bit. Lets him fight you a little bit better. Okay, great. And also because more of his damage is in the AD ratio, he makes him care more about Conqueror, right? That rune is going to do more heavy lifting for him because the bonus AD is going to mean more to then go win his lane and go be a better lane bully. The other change is flattening the W duration to where it's a buff until champion level 17. So very clearly a buff to Garen, but essentially Garen has a very short duration shield and short duration tenacity when you press W, and that is tagged with a moderate to long duration damage reduction, but that damage reduction duration scales with rank from 2 to 5 seconds. And this is making it 4 seconds, so that duration is learnable for both you and your opponent. I'm generally not a big fan of duration scaling, where knowing the duration really matters. Like, I'm really not a fan of giving like shields or things like DR duration scaling, because there's already 160 plus champions in the game.
I kind of like
all
that.
Have 5 skills. In some cases, they have 10. Learning them all is a lot, especially when you're meant to be a champion you're going to see in low elo, like Garen. Makes it even more, I don't want to say obnoxious, but like, I value the consistency quite a bit there. I'd rather have something else scale. So is this going to be 2% of win rate that Garen needs? I'm not 100% certain. To be honest, we are buffing a core item of his in Stridebreaker, which will also do something. But, you know, he needs some help. If we have to do larger work in 0.3 or 0.4, we will. But that's the Garen changes.
Okay, this is fine.
On to Gragas. So Gragas is really interesting. I also did the Gragas changes. I dove into Gragas stuff. So Gragas jungle lost a ton of win rate. Gragas top didn't.
Okay.
And in both cases, they're doing the same build now, which is sometimes Lich Bane, but a lot of Storm Surge.
Storm Surge.
Now, what's interesting is Gragas jungle went Night Harvester Shadow Flame, which makes sense. Those items are easy to use. There's no required optimizations around them, and they both gave health.
Okay.
Gragas had the health to be a melee range, not quite AP bruiser, but he could at least sit in front line a bit and didn't have to just one-shot you.
Okay.
So Gragas jungle lost 2 items he really liked that really fit him as a champion that people could easily use. Gragas top lane often went Everfrost. Now, statistically, Luden's Tempest won way more games for Gragas than Everfrost. Most players are bad at using actives, and so Gragas top went from an item that people were bad at using to just using Storm Surge and being like, I'm a Burst Mage, whatever, and my item works great. This is not to say that like elite Gragas players couldn't do it, but like it certainly happened, right?
Okay.
And so Gragas top, basically, people kind of stopped trolling their builds in a way, and now there's better Burst Mages. So Gragas top is kind of fine. And Gragas jungle really needs the help. And this is why I've talked earlier about probably want to do some like kit updates to Gragas to make him maybe a better bruiser or something. I'm not sure what that would be. There's a lot of things it could be. Haven't sat down and started work on it yet. I'm not even sure it would be me if we did. Regardless, I would like to get Gragas back to relatively AP bruiser levels of durability. Now, to be clear, the amount of armor growth and health growth Gragas is getting here is not making up for the 500 health, I believe.
So he
lost from Night Harvester and Shadow Flame. It's not there. We're not there yet. But it's at least a nudge in the right direction, which is good. Bring up his durability.
Okay.
And then trying to find another lever that is a little bit jungle skewed.
Okay, but something Phreak has to understand this something, okay? He has to understand. If you nerf Storm Surge, and let's say Storm Surge is not what people buy anymore, then what does Gragas' next default item become? Probably Rod of Ages, right? Or are people still gonna play one shot or maybe Seraph or something like that? Right? So I agree that giving him HP and armor is fine, but you don't need to give him 500 back.
Hopefully low elo skewed, which is cooldown on the R. So you can just go fish for ulti ganks a bit more often. That, you know, having the ulti for displacement, just overall his crowd control profile
Not protobot,
is hopefully a more jungle skewed thing than top lane skewed thing. We'll see. But regardless, kind of the thought process here, I fully expect that Gragas top is going to be very good, and that Gragas jungle will still be kind of bad, and he'll need some pretty meaningful updates. His W monster cap is already plenty good. It's like 4,500 like monster health to hit the cap on the W. Like, that's not a problem. It's very easy to just like, yeah, everything but like red and blue, they're taking full damage. Like the cap is not getting in the way there. Would have been an easy change, but it's not in the way. It does 300 damage plus the base and AP ratio. Like, you know, that's not the problem here. So, you know, again, might have to figure this out at some point, but that's what's going on here with Gragas.
Okay, Gwen.
Gwen is just getting a half revert to the passive AP ratio.
Really?
Essentially, she was 49% win rate before 14.1. After the micro patch, she was at 48. We, know how much mag this AP ratio nerf was. We walk it back partially. Okay, great. She'll be back to like 49 and change.
I guess that's
as
fine.
champion, which is, I think, very reasonable for Gwen. Hui is getting buffed.
Hui.
Target win rate for Hui, now that we are going into patch 14.2,
Okay.
is 48%. Will we hit it? Maybe not. But
48%,
that is right now what I think
you will
Hui's
not
win
hit
rate is meant to look like, unless something happens and there's some weird build optimization, or he is a second coming of Rise, which I really, 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 really doubt.
I doubt it
Hui,
too.
goal here is 48. He's at about 45 right now after the previous update. Goal again is 48. This is a pretty meaningful buff on E cooldown from 1511 to 1210. So there's a weird thing about Hui that I want to talk about, which is the cooldown stuff, which is I think it is important that Hui has slightly longer than average cooldowns. And the reason is he has 9 possible spells. Now, obviously, at any given time, he can only cast 3 of them. But because he can replace spell 4 with spell 5, next time he's casting E or W or Q, he once again has 9 spells.
Okay.
Which means he has the right tool for the job more often.
Yeah, so he's more versatile. I agree, Phreak. And I also agree with him that, like, if Hui's spells were super low cooldown, he would just... What the fuck is that, bro? That he would just control the areas like a better Anivia. That's what would happen in high-low games, pro games, okay? There would be chokes, and Hui would completely cover them with EW, the I, with QE, the fucking flamethrower of Rumblewood, okay? That's what would happen. I agree. The champion can't have 2 low cooldowns. We know that. Okay, but the thing is, he lost so much haste, and his W and E are terrible cooldowns on spells. They're horrible. His Q and R are fine. W and E are not.
When you have the right tool for the job more often, those tools either need to be weaker, or you need to have them less frequently. That just has to be the case, right? You either need those tools less frequently, or they have to be weaker tools. There is no other way around this, I don't think. Because he has the ability to have reactive tools if you're going to have this champion.
Yes.
I think this is like completely logically sound, and I don't think there's good arguments against it. I'm happy to hear them if there are, but that is really what I feel here. And so I have been pretty heavily camp Hui should have moderately long cooldowns.
They are too long right now. They are too long. That is the problem.
That said, E is special in that it is his only other damage spell. Yes, of course, you have WE, which is the it's basically Nami E, where you can trigger it with an auto attack. So you can like QQ and then WE auto attack, and that's fine. Or you can WE auto Q, whatever, right? Like, yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Can I say
fine.
Nemesis?
I like how W works. I think it's actually.
Nemesis can riot just buff lost chapter items to buff way since Luden sucks, Serpers gives no damage, and Malignant is useless, revert Liandry.
Not happening.
Really clever,
they should just buff Liandry.
And so it's kind of a rock and a hard place here with the E, where it's like, Hui needs to have longer than average cooldowns, or the spells have to be bad. Sorry, slightly weak, not bad. But on the same side, he is a bit of a combo mage, and it can't just be because he auto attacks, right? The E needs to be part of that one. And so it's like, well, he's getting kind of torn in 2 directions. And so what this is 12 to 10 seconds is, Lux is shorter.
12 to 10
also,
seconds.
The spell is almost always less reliable than something like Syndra E, right? I would say Syndra QE is almost unmissable. Hui's E spells are actually dodgeable.
12 to 10 seconds? He just said 12 to 10 seconds. What is it now? Sorry. 8? No, not this one. 15 to 11. 12 to 10. So it's mostly a buff to early game. It's not that big of a buff later on. I don't like that. Like, I'm sorry to say, but I don't like that, okay? I hate when Riot does this, okay? Hui's early game is not bad. He's really fine first 5-6 levels. He's not the best. He's not bad. The problem is his mid and late game. This is why I don't like buffs that are more early skewed on Hui than they are late game. I really think this champion needs more how played than anything. From my experience playing him. But fine. Listen, I'll take the buff. I won't cry, okay? Because I'm already crying every time I play him. So I'll take the buff. That's totally fine.
It's got a real cooldown. I don't think this is allowed to be short, but I think 12 to 10 is acceptable for
You can max W
what
second,
the
you
spell
won't.
is,
You will max
but
E anyway.
I don't think it gets to go much shorter, to be honest. It's tough, right? Because either the spell's going to be out or whatever. The other thing is letting the
EQ.
duration on EQ.
Okay. Before I hear what the duration is, if he's gonna say it, okay. The reality is that EQ being flat 1 second is really bad in late game. It's strong early game, really bad in late game. So I agree that the ability maybe has to go a bit up, but I think the ability cannot go too much up. Like if they put EQ fear duration to like 1.5 seconds, I already think that's probably too much for the champion. I genuinely think the max they can go is like 1.25. That's probably the max they can go. I don't think this ability should be fearing longer than 1.25, as we have the same issue as Fiddlesticks, okay? Fiddlesticks is like Fiddlesticks Q. Even though this is a skill shot, it doesn't matter.
I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of duration scalers. Duration scalers on crowd control are more reasonable because, like, as the champion who's feared, you can't outplay anyway. When you get control back, you get control back, whatever. And Clay might care about the CC durations, but at least he understands.
Forsen angry TSSK Nemsen for sonst Forsen angry TSSK Nemsen for sonst Forsen angry TSSK Nemsen for sonst.
His own ability.
Thank you.
Right? Like, having to know your timings is different from someone else having to know your timings. Now, certainly, yes, your teammates layering crowd control with you is going to be more difficult. That's so far down the list that, like, yes, it matters. Like, this is not zero consideration. But also, like, the other stuff already scales. The E slow potency scales with rank. The EW root duration scales with rank. And so the EQ fear duration scaling with rank also just seems reasonable. And it's like, yes, the crowd control in fact scales by rank on each of your E rank ups. Yep, seems logical. And how are you going to scale a root by anything but duration, or fear by anything but duration? So very reasonable as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I have to say it again. Someone in chat said that apparently it's 1.5 seconds, okay? It is stupid to give this ability a 1.5 second fear. What this is also gonna do is that Hui is gonna be so much more incentivized to only use EQ on later ranks. So seriously, if you're in late game, you will much rather use EQ than EE or EW. If it's 1.5 seconds, I think it's way too much. I genuinely do think it's too much. 1.25 should be the way to go.
A small ear flick over duration scaling. There's not really a better way around this. Ilawi. We know we want to do work on her in 14.3.
Oh, maybe Phreak was implying he's gonna do a rework on Ilawi. That would make sense in the earlier in the video.
To make her technical gameplay much better, we know it's not great. This is a stopgap set of buffs. We want to put in work to 14.3, where unless something really weird happens, there will be a large set of changes to Ilawi in 14.3 to make tentacles work better.
Okay.
She has more health. I forget if it's base health or health growth. She has more healing via the passive, and she has more mana either through her mana pool or her mana costs. I suggest her mana costs go down so that she can feel better about things like Frozen Heart and opt to go into tank items. Ilawi as a Juggernaut, she is meant to be allowed to build tank items. That is fine. That is completely in class. They are just below tanks in terms of durability, right? This is very, very reasonable. So that was my suggestion. If she just has more total mana, that's fine. That makes something like Fimbulwinter a bit stronger, or Mana Munia a bit stronger, versus having less mana and lower cost makes something like Frozen Heart a bit better, because the impact of the Glacial Shroud mana is felt more strongly. It doesn't really matter which way we go with it, but just want to bring that up. We're off in Karma. Karma changes here. Karma's in a weird spot where
Karma already got. I mean, Ilawi being buffed is totally understandable, right? Her tentacles are horrible now. They can't clear the wave because of the map changes. Blah blah blah. Karma already got buffs by Phreak, actually. I don't know, a couple, like 6 or more months ago, where they randomly added AP into Karma Q and Lulu on the same patch. I remember it vividly. So they're giving her HP, Q and E ratios / base. Oof, okay. Bro, Karma Q is really, really oppressive ability in lane. I would much rather if they add scaling to it, so she's more incentivized to go AP builds than do base damage, because Karma top with with base damage and Q is really obnoxious.
She's about a 46 to 47% win rate champion in top, mid, and support. I think
so
Karma
she's doing bad.
some kit work to get rid of tank karma. I don't think
I
any top
agree.
laners are ever okay with tank karma existing.
I
so
agree.
I actually believe that that build should be deleted.
Thank you.
But that requires
Phreak
kit work,
win.
of course, so not happening in this time frame. Anyway, karma has been pretty bad for a while. We dragged our heels on buffing her. Maybe we shouldn't have. Regardless, we're buffing her now. I would like for karma to be a good champion. She probably just is going to fit the role of, hi, I'm an enchanter lane bully. You pick me if you want to win lane. We know this pro jailed her before, but at least it is an interesting strategic niche to play karma with. Otherwise, she is an R plus E bot, and that's not very good either. I think there's large scale work that can be done, or I should say small to medium scale work that can be done that can probably fix these issues. I'm confident we could build something out that can make her whole kit feel good together. I truly believe that. Regardless, for now, with just numbers changes, Karma is getting better health, as Karma is, obviously she can be a poke mage, but considering her W, I consider Karma like I consider Morgana, which is, hey, you literally chase people down with a tether and self-cast an E-shield. You are actually supposed to be one of the more durable enchanters. You are not Sona, you are not Janna, you are not Nami. You are meant to get in the thick of things and actually fight and scrap in somewhat of a mid-range. She's more like Cassiopeia or Ryze in that regard. That is how I consider Karma. Yes, she has some Q poke, but I would much rather if she was more of a mid-range champion and actually cares about the W and has the kit to support her using the W very well. Which means I think Karma should have very high durability for an enchanter. She should be one of the tankier options. She should be pretty hard to all in by a Nautilus or a Leona. She should maybe be able to survive it straight up. I think that is totally fine. Karma is the tanky enchanter who is very, very good at scrapping. I think is a very reasonable thing and a cool thing to give enchanter players as a sort of strategic niche for this champ. I think that's all fine. Again, because W and RW are things, this is well supported by the hooks in her kit, but I think there's just some numbers that are in the wrong spots, but we can change those. It's not too super hard. Okay, so she is getting more health. That is the reason why, is that she is meant to be much tankier than someone like Sona or Janna or Lulu or whatever. Okay, great. Next line. Large buffs to the AP ratios on Q and E. The primary concern I have from Karma getting poached is actually top lane tank. So there's very, very
Q AP ratio buffs?
Top lane tank Karma. She gets some health. She gets 1 base damage increase, and otherwise that's it.
Okay.
Top lane tank Karma gains maybe 1% win rate. Mid lane Karma, now you look at her spells and it's like, this is a mage kit, right? She's got a one-on-one spell with the W. She's got Q, which is sick wave clear and AoE. Like, if Karma's a functional mid laner, there's not a good way around that. Like, she has the tools to be a good mid laner unless we say that.
Did he say the AP ratio?
Somehow, and we like really brick her mana cost and make her care about her regen more than her mana pool. There are ways to like make it be painful to last hit or like wave clear as her in mid, which will like bridge the gap between mid and support. We don't need that yet. I want to be clear though. I fully expect this to be a set of changes that buffs mid Karma more than support Karma. That said, I don't think we're gonna get 52% win rate mid lane Karma. I don't think we're there. I think it's going to be okay. If we have to make some changes, we will, but I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But it is really, really, really large AP ratio buffs to both Q and E. It's why I went for both Q and E, because certainly, yes, self-shielding matters, but like, this shield is a support output, and congratulations, here's an output that matters. I'm also giving some more base value to ranks 2 through 5 of the E shield as well. Now it is already correct, Karma mains already do this, of 3 points Q into max E. That will undeniably be correct, with the one caveat that with the Q ratio getting better, the cooldown incentive of maxing Q is heightened because you can apply that ratio more often. Even the Enchanter Karma builds build ability power items. They're building, Moonstone or Shirelias or Helias, and then they're building like Ardent Censer or Staff of Flowing Water. Like, they are getting ability power, right? Even if it's not that much, they are buying ability power. Obviously, mid Karma is buying more. By the way, Malignance is incredible on this champion. I think support players might want to consider going Malignance on this champ. If you're going to play Pure Enchanter, feel free. But if you're like, hey, this looks sick, this looks like a huge buff, Malignance Karma looks real nice.
Maybe I'll try it.
It's not terribly expensive. It's one of the cheaper Lost Chapter items. Supports get a lot more gold now. It's not that hard to buy. I strongly recommend you try some Malignance Karma in 1 week's time.
Okay.
Anyway, incredibly large buffs to Karma. Yeah, really, really big changes here.
Okay.
Karthus is getting buffed. When we made the jungle changes in 14.1, I think we're very good, which is closing the gap between turbo clears and bad clears. Karthus, as one of the biggest turbo clears in the game, lost win rate, especially in elite level MMR. Where
it's because Lianji doesn't give mana anymore.
His clear, right? Like, think about your average black
and he lost Lianji
and your average silver Karthus clear. Which one gets nerfed more when you nerf clear speed? It's Blabber, right? Obviously. So guess what? He really sucks in elite MMR right now. What's nice is kind of convenient is it just so happened from whatever kind of happenstance that it seems like bot lane Karthus lost way more power than jungle Karthus did.
That's nice.
I'm over the moon about because it means that we're not ceilinged by bot lane Karthus being, and by the way, this is true in 13.24, a 54.5% win rate bot laner.
54.5.
54.5 in bot lane. That's
Jesus.
absurd. This is why we couldn't buff jungle Karthus, because he was already giga broken in bot lane.
Duh.
So with some room to buff him, congratulations, we get to buff him. And so not only is he getting some Q damage, which will help his jungle clear since he literally lost some jungle DPS. Okay, fine.
It's good buffs.
Also,
W shot is also a good
shred
buff.
on his W from, I believe it's 15% to 25%. It's still not the biggest shred.
He was
ever.
that win rate for multiple patches straight.
But hey,
He was that win rate for years.
W goes up, and that's kind of nice. Shen.
Shen, basically.
Shen, we basically want him to be able to fight at all points in time. Like, yes, he has utility outputs, but...
Bro, I kind of wish Shen would get a rework. Maybe it's just me, but I find it so weird. Like, this champion is like... When he's good, he's way too strong early, and then just like... Just becomes an old bot. I really wish the champ would just get a little bit of a rework.
He is kind of always meant to be a champ who can fight you. And so this is 4 base AD to Shen. I remember telling the designer, like, if you're not a coward, you'll get
4
6.
AD?
Like, no,
wow.
6 AD in one
That's also Titanic Hydra.
But this is his base AD going from 60 to 64.
4 AD is a lot.
Nice, but I think it's fine.
Early game.
I don't, to be fair, I don't personally know exactly what his win rates are and what his power curve looks like. That's up to that designer to look at. I'm not going to, like, literally, spot check every single piece of everyone's work. That's not how my job works. But yeah, Shen is going to be better at scrapping, at better fighting you 1v1, and we want Shen to be good at fighting you 1v1, and so returning a lot of his dueling power over time seems to be the positive thing here, which I'm very happy about.
Veigar.
Very, very light change here. Veigar is incredibly squishy. This is just...
That's it?
We could have gone for armor. His armor is only 18. But he's dying to more than just Zed. He's also dying to Fizz. Fizz
That's
is the
it?
most common matchup, and Fizz eats him alive. So at
That's
least
it?
helps him against that matchup as well.
Hello?
He's kind of a bad matchup to Fizz, don't get me wrong. But it closes the gap a little bit, right? He's a little less assassinatable. Again, still a bad matchup for him. It's not going to change here. But it's a very small, like 1% win rate buff to Veigar, which, yeah, I think fine here.
What the fuck?
A couple of other small changes here. Nautilus. So
who hates
apparently I didn't know
Veigar?
this, but a designer wrote it in Slack, and I was like, yeah, it seems like a good change. Let's do it. Nautilus's Q, when he hooks you, counts as a root.
Wait. Are they finally fixing Nautilus Q?
Which means you can cast spells while hooked. Which just seems kind of incorrect compared to something like, Blitzcrank hook or Pike hook, where you can't. So Nautilus Q is now a stun. Seems good.
What the fuck? You guys are buffing that cancer ability that has the most dog shit hitbox ever? It has infinite range? And that seizes you for 20 years and you guys are buffing it? I hate this company.
Cassante, so this, if I understand correctly, reports I've been seeing are that sometimes Cassante W fails to do anything when you let go of the button. This is, unfortunately, because for whatever reason, I don't know the full story here. I didn't do the initial Cassante scripts. I only know some of how Cassante is scripted. I've spent a lot of time in those scripts. I finished the 0.20 or whatever patch update to him, but man, this champ is complex under the hood. He is complex under the hood.
Yeah.
When I fixed the Hex Flash bug on him, where you could just break up his W with Hex Flash and you could just basically instant cast his W, I basically said, okay, if you channel the W for less than 2/3 of a second and you break out of the channel, just don't do anything. Now keep in mind, the minimum channel on W is 0.75. So, if you break out at 0.66 at a 0.75, something went weird, right? And when I tested this locally, I tested for multiple minutes on end, just like spamming W, The only time I could get this to fire too early was when I had sheet resetting cooldowns. If I never sheet reset my cooldowns, I could not get my W to cast too soon, but it would cast it under 0.75 seconds sometimes, despite the fact that it says the minimum channel time for this W, you cannot exit out early, is 0.75. But I had to add failsafe logic for Hex Flash because just for whatever reason, Hex Flash is a really weird summoner spell. Weird stuff goes on with that thing. I don't know. It's wild. And the QA on this also couldn't replicate it if he didn't cheat cooldowns. He could do it if he did cheat cooldowns, but if he didn't cheat cooldowns, he couldn't get this replicate. And so I was like, okay, then I think we're safe here, whatever. But because I kept seeing sporadic, hey, occasionally my W doesn't fire, I'm pretty sure that's what this is. And so I have softened the like spellcast lockout requirement to hopefully never let you hit this on accident. This technically means you can cut 0.15 seconds off your channel with Hex Flash. I don't think it's worth it, because if you get it wrong ever, you just brick your entire spell. So don't. But technically, yeah, there's a little bit of room to optimize Hex Flash. Again, I'm not rescripting Hex Flash. That thing is a nightmare already. I'm not going to fully rescript because I'm the W. That thing is a nightmare already. I'm sorry, this is not a very great line to hear, but I'm telling you how it is. Some stuff is just a nightmare under the hood. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is, okay? I don't know what else to tell you. Some stuff is a nightmare, and Cassante and Hex Flash are two of them, and they are combining into a nightmare, and I am trying to do the best I can to not get in the way of actual gameplay, while still fixing very clearly abusing bugs that are also not okay. So this is the best I have. I'm sorry if this is unsatisfying, but hopefully this helps fix some of the bugs that are in for Cassante.
It's not unsatisfying.
So that is the patch. That is 14.2. Spent about an hour on it. More or less covered all the numbers.
Hex Flashes shouldn't be a thing.
Fully expect there to be
especially not on
some
Cassante.
tweaks tomorrow morning. And maybe even a little bit later on in the week if suddenly something shows up and want to stabilize or daisy or micropatch 14.2, that might happen. Either way, thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate y'all. LCS this weekend, they are playing at 14.1 with the micropatch. I don't know if LEC is moving on to the micropatch themselves next weekend as well, but I'm excited to watch more esports.
The game is unbalanced.
Phreak. See you next time.
The game is unbalanced. Okay, we need like more patches. You guys are missing so much of the broken shit each patch. Like, how do you got like where do I even start, man? Like, how do you guys only nerf Frozen Heart? Where's a random Zombie nerf? Okay, where the fuck are the Emmer item nerfs? Why is that Galio W item on tank giving people 500 to 1000 free magic damage shield each 12 seconds? Where is the Dream Bubble? Phreak, you are an enchanter player. There's Seraphine right now, Emilio, pressing like this. Like this, they're playing like that. And they're fucking doing thousands of damage. They're shielding for absurd amount, shielding for healing for... where are the nerfs? You guys need to patch the game more. This is nice. I mean, finally we get a patch that has like 17 changes or whatever the hell here it's written, but...
Can I say Nemesis?
Where's the rest? Where are lethality item
no
nerfs?
Lethality nerf, no 2 support items nerf, no mage ability haste buff, no tank nerf, riot.
Where's the tank item nerfs? Where's lethality item nerfs? Dude, I guarantee you right now, lethality items are overtaking the game next patch. They just are. Lethality champs. They are. Like, Kiana's win rate is gonna go fucking to the moon. It is so unskilled. Yesterday I watched a clip of Crown Shot getting one shot in 0.01 seconds by Lethality Shaco. The other day I watched Scrub Noob do a 2.6k crit as Ringer against 160 armor. Yesterday I watched Selfmade Shim playing 6 item Kha'Zix, one-shotting everything on the map, one-shotting every camp. What is going on? Am I the only one spotting these things, or... bro, just suffering continues. Suffering continues, like, what is there to say? Like...
Hey, I'm just gonna go
Look at him, look at him!
We lost our Nash.
That's game!
Did you guys see that? True GA.
Look his
Lost
HP!
for Nash.
And you know what? I posted that on my YouTube, and people in the comments were saying, oh, he could do that last season. No, he couldn't. Like, yeah, maybe he'd kill him, but not this fast. Definitely not this fast. You also have to note, people are saying, oh, jungle champion with full AD build, one-shotting and ADC. They're both level 18, and Crowny has a fucking GA, which gives the armor. Like, come on. I am not opposed to Crowny dying, but to be one-shot without even having to reaction to exhaust or flash? That is not okay, man. It's not like he has 0 defensive items here.
For Nash.
How can you even react to that? That's just inhuman. Like, we're not robots. Bro, we ain't robots.
What? Huh? What? Huh? What the fuck?
This is the game right now. Like, honestly, this is what League has gotten